Hello everyone and welcome back to another Banter movie review. My name is Hazell. Of course, I am joined by my co-host Dykstra, who is always running for his life, looking over his shoulder for suspicious shadowy figures. And today, we're here to talk about Aster's third film, Beau is Afraid, starring Joaquin Phoenix. But hold on. Don't jump the gun. Don't jump the shark. If you want to talk to us about Beau is Afraid or any of the movies releasing today, tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, I don't know.
20 years into the future.
Lots of choices.
Yeah.
You can join our Discord. The link in the description, and while you're down there, subscribe to the channel because you sick bastards. Only, what?
85%?
85% of you aren't subscribed? Yeah. That's crazy. What's up with that?
We missed up we're not looking for more people to be unsubscribed because we said only 85. No. Only 15% of you are subscribed, and we need to remedy that and bump those numbers up.
Tanner, we have seen Beau is Afraid, the Jewish Odyssey.
Jewish Lord of the Rings.
Much like Lord of the Rings, much like Freddy Got Fingered, lots of things going around. The career ender, some have said.
Yes.
For Aster, what are your thoughts on Beau is Afraid?
Tucker, I didn't really know what to think about Beau is Afraid before going in. And, maybe that's a symptom of everyone having to have a take now. Before I even saw the movie, I'm like, what am I going to think of Beau is Afraid? So I was really quite neutral going in. I'm like, this could be, Ari Aster's first flop for me. Or, he's trying something a bit different. We're pushing 3 hours here on this one. But I ended up liking Beau is Afraid. I think it is quite different from stuff that Ari Aster has done in the past. But in some ways, it is quite similar to his previous work. It just takes on a different patina, a different genre. Than his previous work, Midsommar and Hereditary, both very much in that vein of A24 horror, where this is taking sort of a pitch black comedy approach, then wheeling into something completely different, as I'm sure you want to talk about.
I do. I also really like this movie. I was not a fan of Hereditary, though with Midsommar, he was so back, and I was ready. I was ready for Beau is Afraid, especially with Joaquin Phoenix, and to see what he could do outside of the realm of horror, and I think that it largely paid off. But I think this film could be better, and I want to talk about the elements of it that took me out of the experience, taking it from one of my favorite films of the year, which I think it easily could have been, to a film that I was pleased with, but ultimately kind of disappointed by, because I think there's some sections of the movie that do not engage me. This first part of the review is going to be spoiler-free, but that's going to be a pretty short section of this review, because it's a weird movie. We got to talk about the whole thing, and leaving out elements would really do a disservice to discussing this film.
So, and you say that, Tucker, because, the trailers don't give a lot away about the story. They're very...
No, I sent the trailer to my girlfriend, she's like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Hey, I don't blame her. It makes marginally more sense once you've seen it.
It's very loose, very dissegmented, but ultimately the film, plot-wise, is quite straightforward. It is less jumpy around in between what's real, what isn't real than I anticipated it would be. It is quite straightforward. Because what we have is Beau, our main character, Beau Wasserman, who is just, I don't know, he's a schmuck. He's a loser, he's a coward, okay, at heart. Beau is afraid of everything in his life. He has crippling anxiety that he's seeing a therapist for, and since we'll get into non-spoiler stuff we think about the movie here, I think Joaquin Phoenix is very, very good in this role.
Oh, absolutely.
All these facial expressions and line deliveries are just laden with anxiety, with worry, with fear about everything that he's experienced for the previous, however old he is, 55 years of his life or whatever it would be.
Hard to tell, yeah.
But I think Phoenix is very, very good, as he often is in these films.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the actors of all time, to be 100% honest. I think he always puts 110% to every role he's in, and this movie is all him, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's him, and then also the production design and a couple supporting characters. But I was surprised at how much the film focused around just him, because Ari Aster's other films have pretty strong ensemble cast. Two, three, four, lots of supporting roles. But this is a relatively pared back film in that it focuses so heavily on Beau. And I think that is a pro and a con, because while I think that it's a pro absolutely because Joaquin Phoenix sells his performance, I think this is one of his best. He anchors the film. He really sells lots of emotions. I think the best part about him as a performer and Beau as a character is that he's playing it totally straight. This crazy shit's happening. He's seeing like basically the end of the world to him, and he's like, oh God, oh no, I'm so sorry. Oh, what's happening?
Yeah.
He's acting exactly like you'd want him to, and I think that definitely sells these crazy moments with like a very humanizing force in the middle. But I think ultimately, why I liked a lot of the side characters, they're not particularly substantial. They stick around for a third of the movie,
Yep.
and then they disappear. Or they don't show up until 20 minutes from the end of the movie, or whatever it is. And I do wish that maybe there was one or two characters that were more persistent across the entire film, because it ends up feeling lonely, which I know is intentional, but a little bit defocused in terms of through lines across the entire film. And that's, I think, where I want to jump into talking about spoilers for this film, because this is a very segmented film in terms of, it's basically a 4-act film. You've got Beau in his city apartment and then the city at the beginning, and then you've got Beau at the house of, I don't know, what are their names? Donald and Melania? I can't remember their names.
Grace and
Richard, something like that.
Roger.
Roger. God,
Very
so
close. Very close.
We got their house as the second part. We've got him with the Orphans of the Forest as the third part, and we've got him finally returning to his mother's house as the fourth part. And I think that I have very different feelings about each quarter of this film. First quarter of the film in the city, I think easily the best part of the film. I think without a doubt. And I want to certainly get into that. Second part of the film, love it. Love the dynamic. Love the tension that it builds.
Hey, Tucker, should we have given our scores before we get into spoilers?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Whatever. It's still too late.
Okay.
Second part of the film, love it. Love the dynamic. Love Jeeves being there in the background. That's funny. Love the tension that the daughter brings. Orphans of the Forest, do not care for this part. I don't think it adds very much. I think if you cut it and jump straight from parts 2 to 4, I think it'd be a much tighter, much more engaging film. Fourth part, like it conceptually. Love the twist that it brings. Love the craziness at the end. But at that point of the film, because I was so unengaged by the Orphans of the Forest section, I felt it very hard to be like, oh yeah, okay, this is really recontextualizing things in a way that's grabbing me. So this is a very imbalanced film for me. I like 3/4 of it a lot. I like 1/4 less than the other 2/4, but the Orphans of the Forest part just felt nonsensical to me. It felt out of place, and it felt like there was no real impact. And that really lost me for this film, which is very unfortunate, because it really hampered my enjoyment going to the last bit of the film.
Sure, yeah. Well, and I don't really know where I want to start on that, but I guess we'll start where the film starts. We'll start in that first section. The first act of the film, which I really view as, you say this film really has like 4 main settings, but I think it does follow a 3-act structure pretty closely.
Okay.
Wherein our first act is this like Republican conservative ideation of what New York City is like, which is just 12 different crimes happening concurrently all at once on the same street, and it's like that the entire city. And Beau is he's smack in the middle of all this, where he has to like sprint down his street to avoid getting mugged or stabbed. There's some great jokes in here, visual gags, stuff like that, like the birthday boy man stabber, or the Birthday Boy Stab Man is actually what it is. I saw people shouting that out in the reviews on Letterboxd. But yeah, that's funny. There's just, the continued
porn everywhere.
Yeah, there's graffiti everywhere of like butts and cocks and cum and shit and everything. Just people drawing
and curse words.
Yeah, curse words and everything. So there's that element of it, and then of course you have Beau in the middle of all this, who is being like humiliated and disenfranchised, I guess you could say, at every turn, where eventually, he gets his keys stolen and his bag stolen when he's going to fly home to see his mother. And I think that first act really ends, things change for our character at the end of this first act when his mother dies. And then, Joaquin's performance in that moment is great. There's a number of great moments in this film where like Joaquin his world is shattered by something, and he'll just like stand there, and then Aster will cut, and it's like clearly a different time of the day, and he's been standing there, sitting there for hours. There's a number of moments like that in the film, so good editing on that part. Very comedic.
Those are the best editing moments of the film, and I think also this first part of the film has, I think, my favorite moments of editing, of cinematography, of production design, because you're right, the streets and the attention to detail and the camera work that's following him running across the street and all sorts of crazy stuff is happening, and it's so comedically full of comedic bits in the background and comedic timing with these crazy characters and looking across the street and peering out the window and what's going on up there and who's that and
and there's always like whenever you looked out the window, there's always like a random person on the street like locking eyes directly with him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that section of the film does, I think, everything this film does best. It builds tension in really interesting ways. It plays with comedy in really interesting ways. It's constantly pulling out new elements of Beau's personality and testing him to his absolute limits. I think it's generally phenomenal. And I think that if the film kept the energy of that first 40 minutes, I have no idea how long it is. I think this would probably be my favorite movie of the year. But it still has great energy going to that second part, which is at the family's house.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that this is probably this is in contention for my favorite part of the film as well. Only because of Roger and Grace. You know, our only true supporting characters at that point in the film. Nathan Lane and Grace Allen. Amy Ryan. I don't know where I got Grace Allen. I don't know who that is. I think I'm combining character names.
Is that a Flash character, Tanner?
Maybe. But no, they're great. They sort of like have him under like very polite house arrest, and this is where you get the understanding that things are not quite what they seem. They have a son who passed away, killed in action in the war, and his friend is there, and his friend is very, very deeply troubled by some sort of psychosis. And he's just sort of like this looming force in the background, who of course goes on to be like hunting down Beau after Roger and Grace's daughter like commits suicide by drinking paint, and that's a very like Ari Aster disturbing horror moment. I think that language is still in this film in a number of places. But no, Beau like dives through a glass door and he has to get out of there. But throughout that section of the film, there is this like weird politeness that Beau has to go through because he has such anxiety, and there is this like polite everyday anxiety that like underlines everything in every interaction that he has, you know.
I also really adore this section of the film. I think that the setting and the camera work are also at top play here, and the fact that it feels like a much longer section of the film than it is, because Beau is just stuck in one place and he doesn't quite know what's going on. He's just getting used to his surroundings, and the daughter is always messing with him, and there's constantly like mirror shots or someone outside a window, and I really love the tension and the comedy that this brings, because Nathan Lane is easily the best supporting actor in this film. His comedic timing and the politeness that he brings really bounces off of Beau in interesting ways, because Beau is a very polite character, all things considered. He's always trying to be understanding of other people, and when he meets these people that are like scarily polite, he doesn't quite know how to feel, and I really do love the interactions that they have, especially as tension starts ramping up and Beau starts being like, oh god, it might not be what it seems. That you're right. That part of the film is just
and it's where
fantastic.
Beau's main character flaw comes across as well, wherein he has a goal, he has things that he wants, but he is too anxious and like not able to articulate that or act upon those desires in a way that, you know, makes him an active character in his life, essentially. He was always a passive character in his life. We see that earlier in the film when he's asking his mother what he should do. He is scared to make choices for himself. But then, of course, you know, he dives through the glass door. We're running through the forest. He's getting chased down by, what's his name? Jeeves, thank you, of course.
Yeah.
And then, he comes across the Orphans of the Forest, which Tucker, I believe you probably want to talk about.
Yeah, I'm of two minds of this section of the film. I think this is where the visual creativity of the film comes across in its absolute strongest, because he has a 20-minute dream sequence where he goes through an entire life that's also a play that they're putting on, but maybe it's not the actual play. Maybe he's like sort of seeing it in his mind. It's very hard to tell what this section of the film actually is. I think the Orphans of the Forest themselves are, you know, totally fine. And it's, you know, some cool set design, the idea of this traveling band of misfits who's putting on a play every which place they can go. I like that, but it feels largely superfluous, frankly. I don't think that the characters of the Orphans of the Forest play into the larger story very well, which is unlike the other characters because everyone is connected back to his mother at the end of the film, except for the Orphans of the Forest. And that dream sequence, although it's very colorful, it does play with visual creativity and what is set design and what's CGI and what's a green screen background. It plays with all these things in really interesting ways. It's 20 minutes of the film that I don't think adds very much, to be 100% honest. It adds lots of visual creativity, but from a story perspective, it feels like we have to stop and take 20 minutes to tell another story and then cut back to the normal story, and it only barely impacts like one line of like reference back to that, and that really just kills the pacing for me, because it feels like even though Beau is stuck in one place for the second chunk of the film, there's still this momentum of he's trying to get home, but when he gets to the Orphans of the Forest, he's just kind of sitting in one place, and then we cut to a dream world for 20 minutes, and then he leaves. And I really do think that you can stitch together him running through the forest, hitting himself on the head, waking up, and continuing running to his mother's house, or I guess, he gets in a car and goes and catches a hitchhiking ride. I think you can stitch those together, cut out the entire Orphans of the Forest section, and the film would be no different. And frankly, I think it would be vastly superior, because I think the momentum would carry forward a lot better. And you'd have to show Jeeves hunting him down and all that later in some other way. But I think that this is, easily, in my opinion, the worst part of the film. And definitely what takes this from a 9 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I think this is probably where the film loses a lot of its audience. The people who are like, this is a career ender for Ari Aster. Yes. I think this is probably where it happens, because it is, much more expressionistic than the rest of the film.
Yes, true.
But I would still contend that it is an important moment of the film, because it shows Beau what he could have had. Like, it is, to me, I think it's like the idealized version of a life that Beau can never have. Because you try to find the parallels between the story that this angel character is sort of narrating to him, and they're tenuous at best.
They're very strange.
But I think that's because it's just a life that Beau can never have.
Okay.
And I think it's also, on a broader thematic level, I got a little bit from it that it's how, ironically, and maybe this is just maybe colored by some people's reactions to Beau is Afraid, I think it is about how we find ways to relate to art, despite the fact that art is not strictly, it is not 100% our story.
Okay,
because,
sure.
If you think about it, he stands up in the crowd, essentially. It's very, loosely, what actually happens.
He might have been standing up the entire time. Yeah. It's hard to tell.
But essentially, what we can understand happens is he stands up in the crowd, because this is planted earlier, that we like to blur the lines between audience and players. He stands up in the crowd, and he is, sort of greeted by his 3 sons, these sons that he doesn't have. But it's this personal connection that he longs for. And we can understand that once he sees himself in that play, that he is connecting this story on a deep emotional level. And I think that's an important moment in Beau's character, in that, he, has an emotional connection to something or someone for the first time in decades, since he was a child, essentially.
Sure.
And he's imagining, himself in this world where he has everything that he wants. And that, that is important for him going into the final act of the film, because I think in that final act, he acts in ways that the old Beau would not have, I think. I'm thinking...
not the old Beau, because we see old Beau with a beard, but the previous 2 acts Beau.
Yeah, the previous 2 acts Beau. Strangling his mother, I think, is an important thing. And I don't think that the piece that he sort of resigns himself to at the very end of the film, in that final judgment in, the Waterworld stunt show arena, would happen without him being exposed to that sort of Orphans of the Forest expressionist sequence.
Yeah, I like some of the ideas that you're pulling from there, but I do feel that the film works without them. Or I think that they could have been teased out in other ways that didn't take up so much time, because this is a very long film. And when he hits the Orphan in the Forest, our friend Joe leaned over the two of us and said, "We're halfway through." And I'm like, there's no fucking way. And frankly, I think that it feels so long, and to me detrimentally so long, because while you're right, there are these concepts in there, they are tenuous at best. You have to read into them a little bit too hard for me. Like,
But I think it's
really
also
plays in.
I think it's Beau is reading into them as well. He's reading into.
Sure,
the
but I don't
story.
think that necessarily justifies it being a 35-minute chunk of the film, especially when this story that the angel tells is a full story. You can get this in a 5-minute montage sequence that I think achieves basically the exact same thing. The film is already long. A long mini story in the middle I do not think adds enough texture to the themes or the characters to warrant that much time. Filmmaking is a pros and cons game. How much time are we going to spend on this one chunk for it to pay off later in other ways to develop our characters? And frankly, I don't think that section does enough to warrant being that long. And I do think that this is where I would say it's very important for studios to have someone who's able to tell a director no in some circumstances. Creative freedom is absolutely something that I would 100% support, but I think that having an editor, having a producer that knows, like, maybe this is not going to pay off in the way that you think it will, is something that's important for a production company to have. And I think this film would be better received. I think it would be better for the future of Ari Aster's career. I think it would flow a lot better and have a lot more energy and connective tissue if you were able to repurpose some of these elements, to transfer them to other segments of the film and just cut out a section of the runtime that makes this film feel less exhausting. Because that's what it is by the end of the film, especially by the last shot of the film. I'm like, well, I lost the steam that I have at the beginning of this. There was lots of momentum. There was lots of crazy details in the background. And one by one, we lose those elements. We lose the momentum because he's stuck in one place. Okay, that's fine. We still have the dark humor. We still have the wacky side characters. Okay, and then we lose the connection to his forward momentum because we go on this mind journey that, in my opinion, doesn't tune into the rest of the film very well. And then by the end of the film, when we're trying to recapture that momentum, and there's some twist, and his mother wasn't dead the whole time, and we're bringing back the girlfriend the girl that he met on the boat and all that. I'm like, okay, I want to be into these. And then he runs away, and we do Final Judgment, and I like the idea of that sequence, and then the film just kind of peters out, and there's just a shot of him drowning, I guess. Hard to tell. And then directed by Ari Aster. And I think that each of these elements that like chip away at my love for this film. It's like, nope, this is too slow. Nope, this doesn't really pay off. Nope, this kind of just goes nowhere. Those, I think, are elements that can easily be cut, repurposed, retooled a little bit in a different version of the script that really pull out the elements where this film is strongest in its energy it has at the beginning, in different kinds of set design, in connecting all these characters together, pulling out different elements of Beau's personality. I think the film loses its focus, and I think that's strongly to its detriment by the end of the film. And unfortunately, even though it's very creative, I think also in that Final Judgment, because it comes out of nowhere, has some interesting moments, but is also just too long for its own good, and then just peters off into the wind.
I don't know. I think you're saying a couple things that seem at odds with each other in my mind, because like you say that the film is exhausting, but at the same time that it loses steam. Because I think that
how are those at odds?
Well, when you say a film is exhausting, I interpret that to mean like it's moving so fast all the time and
no, not necessarily. I think it's so long and a lot happens that I'm like, kind of hard to remember everything by the end.
But because what I was going to say was I think that play sequence provides us a breathing moment in the film.
I strongly disagree.
Okay.
That's where I felt the most exhausted. Like, I was like, geez, okay, I got to keep up with all this, and maybe this will tie in, maybe it won't, and by the end, because I thought it didn't, it was not a breathing moment for me. It was like, I'm fucking sprinting to keep up with this.
Oh, so yeah, I thought, it's displayed in this very, like, calming manner. We have this very nice, smooth narration over top of it. We're seeing some very nice, pretty, like, hand-drawn animation-esque images. But then, of course, we do go into the final act of the film, which I want to talk about. Because, as you mentioned, Beau's mother is alive, Mona is alive, but before we figure that out, we are reintroduced to Elaine, who is shown to us in these flashback sequences throughout the film, and who represents, like, Beau's ability to have a connection outside of his mother, who is the only person that he's shown to, like, actually have a connection with in the film. She is reintroduced, and they, like, go upstairs and start to have sex, and we are like, maybe things will be okay for Beau in the long run. Because in Ari Aster...
Oh, I never thought that for a second.
Well, all right, fair point. But I think you're so kind of supposed to. It's like, maybe Beau can get what he wants. He is free of the weight of his mother. He has, like, witnessed this life and sort of had a spiritual moment with this play that he just witnessed. And now he is, like, getting a happy moment right here. He's getting something that he's always wanted. And as Ari Aster said in his Criterion Closet video, Beau is Afraid is about a story about a guy who just needs to come. That is the case, in literal ways and, metaphorical ways, I think. But of course, he does Although
Elaine.
Oedipal complex, we get it, Ari Aster. Your dad is a penis monster. Which is a crazy thing that actually happens. Like, I'm not even joking. Dad is a penis monster up in the attic. And then of course, we enter that final sequence after a prolonged argument with his mother, who is not actually dead. And we're in the final judgment, and I think it is like, this final moment of spiritual reckoning for Beau.
Sure.
Because, I'm sure there'll be plenty of articles that are like, did Beau actually die when he had sex? And is all of this like his death dream? Is it like a judgment and then purgatory and the final judgment? Perhaps. I don't know. There's a lot of different things you can get out of this movie, which is, I think, indicative of Ari Aster's previous work. I'd also like to say, on a broader statement, as we wind down here, because we need to. I think that this is probably the most Ari Aster movie that Ari Aster wanted to make.
Sure.
Like, I don't think he's ever been...
Oh, God, yeah.
I don't think he's...
I don't think they can let him have this much creative freedom in the future, to be honest.
You know what? I'd be all for it, because while I do enjoy his previous work, it does feel as though it is like this, and I'm sure he wanted to make these movies, that they're in this A24 horror genre, where this feels
much... kind of established that.
Yeah, where this film is much more like the Ari Aster brand of comedy that's always kind of present in those films, but never was forefronted, and now it is.
I thought it was funny when that guy's head got smashed in with that mallet.
Exactly. It's always kind of been there, where these images that Ari Aster crafts do elicit some sort of reaction from you, whether that be disgust, whether that be laughter. And I think he's aware of that, and I think that's intentional. I think that this is just much more comedic than his previous work. So, Tucker, I'm going to give a score here, okay? I'm going to go Beau's Afraid. I'm going to go 7.5 out of 10.
Okay, well, I'm going to go just a little bit lower, 7.3 out of 10. I think that I critique this film a good amount, but ultimately that first half of the movie is just worth it. And the end of the movie and the whole thing with learning about his mother and the company and that he was like the face, he was like the poster child for all of this, and recontextualizing the history that he had with Elaine, and his dream sequence becoming real, learning more about his father and his brother and what the hell is going on here, and seeing that really cool house. All of these elements that are placed on top of such a remarkable opening that I was laser focused on. I wanted to notice every corner. I wanted to see every wacky side character. I wanted to learn more about this world, and the radio ads and the TV ads and the posters, and like everything is just so meticulously designed that this is just like, it's a feat of filmmaking. I think it's a feat of filmmaking that I have heavy criticisms that I think could easily be fixed by what I posited as the shorter director's cut. I will download this film off an illegal service in like a year or whatever, and I'll cut out the Orphans of the Children part. I'll be like, all right, perfect, Beau's Afraid, here, let's go. Which is interesting, because usually I've got complaints on films sprinkled a little more evenly across the entire thing, but for me, this film was just incredibly imbalanced. I went from, oh god, yes, I love that he's diving out the window and the daughter just drank pain, the Orphans of the Children's part, huh? And then, God, back. It's like, I don't know. I like this movie, though. It's still, at the end of the day, this is my favorite Ari Aster film, because I think it does it feels the most distinct. It's really aping on a lot of different kinds of genre conventions and storytelling conventions, and it just feels so out there, and I really respect that. So at the end of the day, if I could reflect on this, I could rewatch it. Maybe I don't really know if I have.
Tucker, there'll be a video essay that's like, "What is Beau's Afraid?
Really about?
What is it really about? What does it all mean?"
Ending explained.
Yeah, it'll people a lot smarter than me who have seen this movie multiple times will be like, here is specifically what the Orphans of the Forest sequence is about. But I think broadly, I understand that it is an important moment for Beau's character. And that's why maybe I'm not like, oh, cut it out of the film and you'll be hot to trot with this, Ari Aster. But nonetheless, he's got more work coming, more work with Joaquin Phoenix coming.
That's true. He's already got a film in production.
Yeah, a Western of some sort. Yeah. So, all right.
Why the fuck not? Yeah. Let's see. Well, we'll be here to review that, and of course, we're here to review Beau's Afraid. We want to talk to you about it. Comments, Discord, like video, subscribe. You know what to do. Mm-hmm. See you guys for another video. Revideo. Oh, that's what we should call them. Oh.
We shouldn't.
Right. Ready?
Yes.
God, okay, calm down, chicken nugget. My little carrot. That's what his mom calls him, remember? Carrot?
No, she calls him little fucker. Doesn't she?
No, she calls him Carrot.
No, she goes, "You liar! Liar!" You know, when she does that. I didn't finger your brother, you liar!
Oh, you can't think of getting your wires closed.
Yeah.